All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this, what I hope to be a series of webinars that we'll be hosting under AAXO. I'll give it a minute or two for some people to join. For those that have joined early, my name is Errol Bryce. I'm a current sitting AAXO board member, and we'll be starting this webinar shortly. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this first edition of what I hope to be a series of conversations around technology. Today's conversation, the theme is around disruption or enablement of technology within the African events market. My name is Errol Bryce. I'm the current AAXO board member. I'm also the Group Commercial Director at VUCA Group, and you're most welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to have today on the panel with me two gentlemen who I greatly admire and have deeply entrenched knowledge around technology and its value, not only to the industry we serve, but across other markets as well. So before we kick it off, I just want to say, if you have any questions to the panelists, you're welcome to post them in the chat on the right-hand side of your screens. As those questions come in, I'll attempt to pose these questions to the panelists around the Q&A time. This is going to be a 60-minute conversation, so we'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes for the panelists to answer the questions. So without further ado, I just want to introduce to AAXO. AAXO is the trusted voice of the African exhibition industry. AAXO is also committed to promoting the African exhibitions industry, encouraging businesses to invest and participate in exhibitions, affording members the tools and resources for successful exhibition management, and encouraging world-class industry standards. This dedication is evident in AAXO's commitment to linking organisers to a network of suppliers and opportunity to ensure growth and exclusivity continentally. So, as I mentioned today, this will be the first of our series, I'm hoping, of conversations around technology within the African exhibition industry. I'm very pleased to invite my panelists to join me. We have today Raymond Collins. A little bit about Raymond. He is an AI executive at Braintree, where he helps organizations navigate one of the biggest technology shifts of our times. He spends his days talking about AI, reading about AI, and occasionally convincing people that AI is neither magic nor the end of humanity. His focus is on helping businesses understand what's real, what's hype, and where the opportunities lie. And then the other panelists today, I'm very pleased to introduce Alex Searle. Alex is the head of human and AI development at VUCA Group, where he helps exhibition organizers put AI to work without losing the human premium that makes live events worth attending. His focus is on practical adoption, where automation genuinely frees people up and where it should stay firmly out of the way. Welcome, gentlemen. It's great to have you on this panel discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to kick off with the first question. And this is a question I'm going to pose to both of you. I'll invite you, Raymond, to answer first, and then Alex. So when people hear AI and technology in events, many immediately think about automation or ChatGPT. Are we thinking far too narrowly about what is actually happening?
Yeah, I think for good reason, because ChatGPT all the way back in November 2003 became, the stand-in for what generative AI actually is, right? So people relate that automatically, but there's a whole host of solutions. It's no longer tools like ChatGPT alone, but it's ecosystems that organizations are adopting, right? From your Googles to your Microsofts, your Magnificent Sevens, they are now bringing forward a panoply of ecosystems with products and solutions within them. So it's a far more broader sort of a term than just one tool, per se. But listen, that was the little guy that caused all the trouble. So yeah, ChatGPT, was the guy that started the conversation.
Excellent. Thanks, Raymond. And Alex, the same question to you.
I think in a way there's an obvious answer that yes, we are thinking too narrowly. If we look at the cycle of what happened in the last major technological revolution of the internet, let's say 30 years ago, we're still in the kind of the floppy disk stage. Not even, probably. I think we're probably still in the those giant floppy disks, or I don't think we've even kind of gotten to the part where we had those phones with the aerials. We're still so very much prehistoric in terms of where this big super cycle is going to go, and just how big and how transformative artificial intelligence will be, not just in events but across the world. We all know that, but there's in a way something. But part of me wants to also kind of answer that we're not thinking narrowly yet about this, because even though there are those obvious answers, the usual suspects, ChatGPT, automation, Claude, that's also what people have been exposed to. And so we all do what we know, and we approach the world and we approach uncertain things that look risky, things that look unfamiliar, with what we know, And so when we look at AI, we will look at through a ChatGPT lens. And that's okay. That's not anyone's fault. It's just a sign that we're early and that we've got a long way to go. And there's still time to open up that view so that it can be broader, so that we're operating in a larger world. And we will.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that, gentlemen, for your insights to that opening question. So my question to you, Raymond, in the discovery call that we had leading up to this webinar, you described that AI is being comparable to the arrival of electricity rather than simply another software tool. Why do you believe this is such a fundamental shift?
Because it's not just an enterprise scenario, right? ChatGPT came along, and what that ignited, was a chain of events where, just like electricity, the fundamental processes of how society goes about doing things will change, right? Right now, we're using this as tools that we are latching on. But once this becomes the fabric of the way that we operate, where we do mundane tasks and where we automate the types of tasks that we created busyness from, once that gets ingrained in society, it's like it is electricity. And the perfect metaphor for describing it is electricity, because the growth and the evolution that a discovery like electricity enabled is exactly where AI is. Once organizations in particular stop playing around with the proof of concept and thinking about this as a tool and start ingraining it as a fabric of their business and become AI first companies, right? Then those organizations themselves are going to become flatter. That you're going to have workforces that are project managed, that are in tandem with your agents that are created out of it. So the whole future of the way that we work and the way that we operate will see AI at the heart and at the center of that. And that's not a scary thing. That's actually an optimistic and exciting thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it being another tool. So I suppose if AI isn't simply another productivity tool, then what does it actually become for organizations?
So we used to create tasks and work wholesale from the Industrial Revolution, right? We used to create tasks and work on what specified job, as largely you could say artifact manufacturing, data collection, and collating of information and knowledge to be able to produce products, but to be able to make the best decisions to produce those products at the highest profit. So all of that collection stage, and this is where the revolution really is, if you cast your mind to it, all of the collection stage, that's largely what jobs were made of, right? We would produce artifacts like Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Teams, right? To be able to produce data, to be able to make decisions off. Now, if all the aforementioned data correlation is taken care of with AI, what does that leave us with? So you see the fundamental, it's a paradigm step shift where we're moving from data correlation, which defined, the last couple of 100 years of what organizations did. And now AI is automating that and allowing us to become decision makers. And I'm talking all of us in our jobs will become decision makers very, very soon. An executive function with critical thinking. That's where we're going.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for those insights. So I suppose the question that I wanted to pose to Alex now is, so from inside an event organizer with what Raymond just said in mind, where have you seen technology genuinely change the way teams work rather than simply helping them work faster?
I think it in a way follows on from the point that that Raymond was just making now, where it is, let's say specifically, because we're talking about a broad range of technologies, of which AI is one, but where I've seen it make a big difference here, where I'm working as kind of head of enablement of artificial intelligence within the VUCA group, is to allow people to make that big kind of mindset shift away from it just being a tool. Because it is a tool, and it's a phenomenal tool. Of course it's a tool, but it's also not just limited to being a tool. It is, and certainly in the future, this will become more and more widespread as well across the world, where AI is used as an interface with which to manage other tools and other streams of work and other ways of getting things done. So similar to what Raymond was saying there, where people move from being just workers or working to orchestrating, to being able to direct and own various different processes across sometimes different roles, different business units, different types of jobs that are needing to be done, where you are having a kind of a set of, whether it might be human or non-human resources, agents, they're kind of able to continue to do that work, and AI becomes the interface through which that work can be done and how it's directed. So it's exciting when you start to really get that insight and really think about it like that, rather than just write this email for me, please, Gemini. And that's where it made the biggest impact.
Yeah, awesome. So I suppose a follow-on question to you then is what surprised you most once VUCA began embedding AI into everyday operations?
I think two things come up. I was really genuinely surprised and gratified that there was so much willingness to learn. I think it speaks volumes about the kind of business that VUCA happens to be, and the collection of beautiful humans that we happen to be as well. We've got a lot of really willing, intelligent, smart, creative, interested people who are keen to see, can this, whether or not it is a disruptor or enabler, we're willing to find out, we're willing to try. And so I think that zest for experimenting and trying new things is so important, and there's definitely that in abundance. And I think the other thing that was surprising, or at least something that hit home as a real strong reality, was that if we're looking to embed AI into an organization that has a lot of legacy processes, we're events people, we're not a tech company, we're there to connect people to information and there to create an amazing environment for great things to happen, for relationships to flourish, which means there's always a big human part in what we do. But in order to get AI to have a serious impact on all that, you've really got to get a real sense of what a process is and what it should be, and how hard that is. And it's not because it's a good or bad thing. It's just that processes, I think, by nature, are actually quite difficult to really capture. Not how you want them to be, but how they actually are today. And that is such an important piece of context to be able to capture so that you can start on your AI journey in the right way. So it's been challenging, it's been interesting, and never short of surprises. But those are two that come up.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. And I couldn't agree with you more. Interestingly, last week or the week before, UFI put out the latest barometer report. And in that report, globally, 91% of exhibition companies now use AI in some form. The dominant mode is still a basic tool usage. So 70% use standard tools such as GPT, Gemini, Copilot, Midjourney. And then 17% have AI-powered tools integrated into existing platforms, and only 4% have proprietary algorithms trained on internal data, and 9% reported little or no AI use. Conversely, South African respondents report far more platform integration than the global average. So globally, only 17% reports integrated AI tools. South Africa companies that responded to this survey report 50%. And then proprietary data trained algorithms, South Africa reported 10% have implemented. Obviously, the sample size, I do want to say as a disclaimer, was 12 respondents for South Africa. We unfortunately don't have tremendous amount of data for Africa, but I'd like both of you to comment on this and your views on where the market is currently at. And we'll start with you, Raymond.
Sorry, if you can just repeat that. There was a bit of a glitch there. Were you asking on where I think the market is at in South Africa in particular right now?
Yeah, sure. So based on the UFI reports, there's been a higher adoption than seen globally. Obviously, it's a smaller sample size, and around 10% of event organizers actually haven't implemented AI into their businesses. I just wanted to get your professional thoughts on that.
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, South Africa segmented, to a whole variance, okay? But here's the telling factor from a global stage, right? When you look at the mass adopters of AI at this point, it's actually the large companies that have got this existential fear of having to engage in this technology because the AI itself, if they don't act, will render it irrelevant. I'll give you an example, right? There's a certain company that has released AI products for legal and also for design. So all the rearguard action of those companies that were releasing and that were using the early tech, right, are now, they have an existential threat because those companies have, ostensibly cannibalized them if they don't adapt. So the driver is the massive companies that are being forced to ingrain AI as the fabric of the operation. Now, when you count how many of the size of those companies are in South Africa, there's very few, okay? But that's where the mass adoption is, numbers-wise. When you look at it, the fintech industry, the banking industry have been forebears of this, for 3 years. They've actually been way ahead of the curve. And then the manufacturing industry, because those are all the same that are affected. Small and medium businesses are where the gap is at the moment, where people don't quite know, and industry doesn't quite know how to adopt this. It's a mix of classic South African enterprise conservatism about the ROI isn't proven yet, so therefore I'm not going to do a proof of concept on it until I sit and wait back and see my European and American cousins. And then, at the same time, it's because, we want to run lean and mean, and we don't want to, spend spuriously. So on the small and medium business side, that's the lack of adoption. On the larger enterprise side, they are firing on all cylinders, adopting AI processes as we're speaking. That's been my observation.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. Alex, your comments, observations.
Maybe I'll come at it from a different approach. I'm really quite gratified at those numbers and why it seems, even if it's a small sample size, that there's a 50% marker there, which is quite in leaps and bounds ahead of some of those other territories. So I think that you definitely have a conservatism, like Ray said, that's there, and that can be part of an old guard. But I think you've also got a really interesting and diverse and dynamic bunch of young people, or younger-minded people, should we say, who are very keen to be able to embrace and to try things and to not be held back by legacy thinking or systems or mindsets. You've got entrepreneurs who can vibe code an entire business, on a laptop in a weekend, and suddenly compete with larger established players across many markets for market share. So I think it's exciting, and I think it reveals a trend that I hope continues.
Yeah, great insights there. Thank you, Alex. So while you're here, many organizers are actually asking, well, where do we start? And I appreciate the fact that we're speaking predominantly about AI. It's not necessarily AI, but the advancement of technology and whether it's an enabler and a disruptor. But the question, where do we start? If you were advising another organizer tomorrow, where would your first three priorities be? Or should I say, what would your first three priorities be?
I think there are three important concepts to keep in mind. I think the first is having clarity on business vision. So this is not anything to do with AI or technology, but having clarity on the mission and where we want the business to be, let's say in 3 to 5 years' time. That's always going to be important, in anything that you do. Because really, when you look at it, AI, if we're thinking about AI as a tool, it really is a business change tool. And if we're needing to change or to pivot or to grow or to segment a business in some way, AI can definitely help you do that, but it can't do that. It can't give you your vision for you. You've got to be able to operate with that kind of clarity. And if you don't have it, or if it's not good enough, that's the place to start, to dig deep, to think about it, to hire some people, to do what you need to do, to be able to really get a clarity on your values, where you're going, what you do for your customer, and why you're irreplaceable in your vertical. That's the first thing, clarity on what you do and where you're going. The second is to be able to be really clear about the kind of knowledge that you manage. For VUCA, we're a content and information business, really. It's about events, but what powers all of that is ensuring that the right information and the right content reaches the right people. So that's a big, sophisticated operation. So you need to be able to manage your knowledge and your content and your data in increasingly effective ways, which means that you've got a stack, you've got some platforms, and you've got probably quite a complicated environment of different types of tools and platforms and systems, and what users needing to kind of cross-pollinate continuously and to work and to make that work and to make it make sense and for it to be accurate. So it's a good idea of thinking about where knowledge needs to flow, where content and data needs to flow, and how users need to be empowered to work collectively and then to go away and achieve what they need to do individually as well. So thinking clearly about where knowledge needs to be. And I think thirdly, quickly, just to wrap it up, is once again coming back to that sense of willingness. Where can your culture, your business's culture, your people look at the idea of any new technology, not just artificial intelligence, but AI in particular, with a sense of wonder and with a sense of curiosity, with the support from management as well, to make it feel like that they can be curious and they can experiment without punishment, or maybe not punishment, but without it being too much of a negative ramification, that they've got space to try new things, because that's where disruption lies, in trying new things, seeing where you get lucky. Yeah, so you make a good start if you can think about those three.
Those are three very good priorities. Thanks, Alex. So I suppose on the converse, what mistakes do organizations make when trying to implement AI from your perspective?
One is to try and fix things that aren't broken, and to mess with things that perhaps need to be left done manual or done in a certain way a little longer than perhaps you might have the itch to change. I think that's one. I think the other is over-investing in too many tools and too many different disparate systems too early and too quickly. These are all forgivable mistakes, because you want to find the solution. You want to be able to spend or to investigate or to research, and so often what do? We do too much. We go in 4 different directions instead of one. And so those are all remediable, things that you can fix. But it's worth looking out for those kinds of common mistakes, trying to mess with too many things or overinvest in too many different platforms too soon before you know really what is the beast that you're dealing with and what you really want to do, coming back to the clarity of your vision, of course, again, as well.
Yeah, so the priorities, prioritize your priorities. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex. So a question I have for Ray, you mentioned to me that adoption's becoming inevitable rather than optional. Why do you believe organizations should think about AI as a business ecosystem rather than another application?
Because it will change the fabric of their business. I mean, it's a dramatic statement, but there is no truer scenario that can be painted about it, right? As I said, people are doing proof of concepts. They have been for the last 2 years doing proof of concepts, dipping their toes with AI to see. The most intrepid businessmen right now are reimagining their businesses from the ground up with AI at the heart of it. So in other words, they know what the art of the possible is. They've experimented with the tool set, and now they're prepared to actually embrace the ecosystem of many tool sets to be able to replace a lot of the things that were mundane scenarios that always held their employees back, right? So as I said, the most intrepid people that are adopting AI at this point are reimagining their entire organization. And this is at scale. You're talking about, if you look at the consultation industry, all of the major guys that we know, the KPMGs, PwCs, all of these, they are reimagining their entire business model, based off this. So this isn't a tool that you adopt where it improves efficiencies, right? That's a very narrow way of looking at it. This is a process that you have to incorporate if you want to create a business, going forward, and you want to remain at the competitive edge, by doing it. So it's a seismic shift, Errol. It's beyond a tool set,
It's interesting you mentioned that. I want to bring the human factor into this. So one of the biggest fears that I certainly have heard, and you hear it through mainstream media for quite some time, is that AI is going to replace people. And you have a different perspective. How should leaders be thinking about the future workforce?
The mental framework that I always like to speak to people about is this. Imagine a time early on, a couple of centuries back, where we had horses and carts, right? Mm-hmm. And we had heard a rumor that there was this guy, Henry Ford, that had created something, okay? And that horse and cart repair buggy man, right, who used to be able to fix the wheel and who used to be able to maintain the cart, couldn't have imagined that with a bit of upskilling on this new technology that this man Henry Ford had created, he would become a mechanic. He couldn't even envisage the concept of a mechanic. And that's the mental framework I believe we're at now. Right now, we are horse and buggy men fearing that we are losing our jobs, where we can't imagine the new vehicles or the new entities that are going to be created. So this isn't necessarily replacing anything that in my estimation is going to be of major value, but rather an evolution towards a better way of working, of which we are going to be upskilled and pulled along with it. And everybody, I think, will be commensurate in their skill of being able to harness AI, depending on how much they actually want to get involved with it. But there's also another proviso here, AI is becoming easier to use. Every model that carries on, the obtuse term prompt engineering, where you used to have, context, and you used to have 4 different criteria to be able to speak to it. Now, AI tools are becoming far smarter, far more contextual, far more trained on your personal history to be able for you to have a shorthand as if you're speaking to a sentient being. And with that, right, you have true thought collaboration at all levels. My mother, who's 75 years old, is doing it, okay? All the way through to a computer engineer who Alex has alluded to is vibe coding apps in a day, whole software systems, in a couple of hours. So the paradigm shift in productivity increase is head spinning. And that's what I think society are having a problem digesting at the moment, is the actual rapid rate of progress.
Yeah, that's excellent. I love the analogy of the shoemaker becoming the mechanic rather than becoming unemployed. Maybe can you unpack that for our audience a little bit more?
Okay, so I alluded to it in a couple of answers back, right? But let me clarify where I think we're going with this. Okay, quite often, a major part of our job is to produce data to be able to do decisions. Now, that data is in the form of either an artifact, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, a Word document, whatever that is, right, to relay it. A large part of our time is collating that information, being able to turn that information into relevant knowledge so that a decision maker, and we normally pass this up the chain to a decision maker, and this is the hierarchical structure of an organization. But it's based on necessity because you need people to collate and gather information. You need people to make decisions. What happens if that's all flattened and we become decision makers because the correlation of that data to make the accurate decision is all automated now, and it's all sentient, and we free up our critical faculties to be able to be really creative, empathetic, and to use our judgment, because the empathy, the creativeness, and the critical thinking, those three faculties, I believe we will always beat AI in. And that's where the harmonious symbiosis between data collection, presenting, and then us using those three faculties will create a new order of work. And that will affect an organizational structure where we become project teams that are more based on the outcomes than we would be based on creating data artifacts and passing them up the chain for somebody else to do. So that's where I see this.
Fantastic insight, Ray. I appreciate that, and certainly food for thought. And I want to come back to that, the futuristic view. I want to get some of your insights on what we're going to see in the future. Maybe just to jump to Alex, a question to you is: if AI becomes part of everyone's working life, what new skills become essential for people working in exhibition and events?
You know what's interesting about this is, and just as Ray was saying now, the kind of sketching a vision for really how capable artificial intelligence is, but also really still will grow to be in the coming years, and how integrated, how capable, how intelligent it will become, and how much it can do for you. I think that it's going to have two effects. I think it's going to allow us, if we're willing, and if the individual is willing, which really is an important part of us too, we're going to kind of reacquaint ourselves with the types of skills that are important, but actually always have been there. And it's going to allow us to reacquaint ourselves with other skills that have always been there, that we still use, and that we're going to continue to use. For example, with people who work in events, there's always going to be someone who's going to need to make sure that the TV screens in the matchmaking room, they work. Are they plugged in? Do they work? Is the aircon on? How's the catering doing for, the gala dinner later on? These are always things that need to have a human touch, a human domain in them. Not necessarily because AI can't do it, and we haven't even spoken about robotics, because that is another huge revolution that will be coming our way over the next 5-10 years as well. But really, we are in charge of curating environments. And that's always going to be the case, because people want to come to an event and they want to be able to come for connection, for a vibe, for what the feeling of the room is like. They want to walk the floor and get a sense of what's possible. And that's still going to be the same, whether it's, in 2030 or 2050. I think it's still going to be the same. The technology changes, but the appetites and the demands are still the same. We're still humans. We still want the same things. So I think that there's going to still be, yes, it's all about curiosity and creativity and using your judgments and discernment and empathy, of course, but those aren't new things. We shouldn't frame that like those are new things. We've always been using those. And if anything, it's a good reason. AI gives us a good reason to kind of fall in love with those again and realize that we can prioritize that without feeling guilty or pushed into it, because that's what we're good at, and that's what we'll always be good at and needed for.
Yeah, excellent insights there. Thank you, Alex. So a question then that I'd like to pose to the both of you before I do For the live audience in attendance, if you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to post them in the chat. I will pose those questions later to them. And don't be shy. You're welcome. Any questions, a great question, whether you feel it's good or not. I will pose it to the panelists later. So if we had to, for both of you, if we had to fast forward 3 years from now, what do you think the best event business in Africa will look like?
I'll go first, okay? Because I'm not of the industry itself, I'll project from a customer point of view, knowing a little bit about AI, but also being a customer, what I'd like as an experience, right? I'll answer you that way. So I would want it completely personalized. When I go to an event, right, I would want it almost like it's a red carpet service for me, right? So my specifications, if I'm being rolled out to an event of some sort, from the menu that I'm engaging with, from I just came from, I had the fortune of coming back from a conference in Germany where they got it half right this way, right? Where they took my preferences and AI took it up front, and then they try to curate the journey going forward. And you could see they got only as far as the technology would allow them at that stage to be able to do. But it felt like, a very personal journey to me, where people greeted me by my name, okay, because they looked on my, it wasn't just, the badge on me, it was actually, felt, fed through their communication system. So I would say for events management itself, where you can become quite homogenized and maybe anonymous, is a more personal consumer experience, where they feel that the event itself, although it's large, it's personally curated for them, or they get that feeling that way. That would be my fantasy, I suppose.
Alex, thanks, Ray.
Yeah, I think that we're on the cusp of entering a time in events where we get to double down on all the good things, and we have the opportunity to kind of fix and change and improve the things that I think have been a stone in the shoe for a lot of event organizers and people who come to events for decades, because there's many things that are still the same and that somehow, we kind of still tolerate. So I'm excited about hyper-personalization of messaging, of communications, and of experience as well. There's so many other technologies that we haven't had time to discuss today aside from AI, but there's so much going on in the world of, like I said, robotics, AR, VR. There's there's holograms, there's holographic technology. There's so much stuff that is really bringing not just a personalized, but a very immersive experience into what otherwise could just be a very dry and dull and boring, experience of shaking hands and accumulating business cards. I don't think that's why people come to events. It's because they want to feel that magic in the room, that spark with someone else, and oh my God, that turns into an opportunity. Or wow, there's a startup that gets the right kind of investment and they change the world. That's why people want to come to events, because they believe in events. It really is like that. So I think that making things personal, really doubling down on what contributes to an immersive experience, and also having a little bit of a dash of the totally experimental. I've been to some events in Europe where there is an interesting mix and a blurring of the personal and professional, shall we say, where there's different ways to set up connection and matchmaking and networking. It doesn't always have to end with a gala dinner or a lunch at one. There's different forms of entertainment. There's different ways to really feel like they can be comfortable, they can be authentic, and they can be themselves, and really move into that space, like we keep on saying, that kind of real human connection space. So I'm excited, and I think all these tools allow us to really, paint the town red with what's possible.
Yeah, the irony, just to
go ahead, Ray.
The irony is how Alex is, and I love his answer, but how AI is actually making us become more personal with the human touch. You see how that could enable that. That's the irony, right? People think we're driving away from that, when actually, like in Alex's vision, it enables that. and that's the exciting part about this.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm hearing. It's actually an enabler, rather than we've faced disruption globally for all of us, but in that there is enablement, and that human factor now comes to the fore, which I love. So maybe we can pivot a little bit, and I'll pose this question to Alex around practicalities. So where are the quickest wins then that organizers could achieve today without major investment?
I think there's lots to be said about creating the space or the resource for your staff to be incentivized to do some of their own learning, to go on courses. You can do so much stuff that's free as well. So much of the AI knowledge that I've picked up over the last 3-4 years has just been watching many hours of YouTube. I didn't go and study it. I didn't, it's just about watching, learning, and then trying. And that is the best way to apply what you know into AI, which is really what we all want. So I think incentivizing learning and incentivizing experimentation is such a big part of it, because there's so much you don't know when you start. And the only way to do that is to clear the fog and to learn. I think there's other ways of also looking, kind of doing an audit of all your platforms is also probably a very important place to start as well, rather than thinking we need to AIify everything. First, look at what the platforms are doing and how well they're integrated, if they're integrated at all. Your client and your customer and your delegate-facing platforms, your internal platforms as well. How well are they working right now? And what do they need to be doing? And I think having a sincere and frank audit on where that is probably the best place to start, but also one of the best quick wins, because then you know what to do next. It's easy for AI to kind of, it's always like that when you have an abundance of choice, you end up not choosing anything. I was like that at the restaurant earlier, where I just saw 25 different things of things that I all would love, and I stood there for a good few minutes just not making my mind up. You open the fridge up, it's full, you end up not taking anything. So sometimes with too much choice and too much availability, it becomes hard to know where to start. And it starts with making sure that your own house is in order, and then looking at, okay, what am I doing in marketing? What am I doing in sales, event ops, event design, any of your central departments as well? How well are these functioning as sort of business units? And where can they be enabled and where can they be improved with or without AI? It's first, what does the business need from them? And asking that question honestly, and then seeing, okay, how can AI be part of that equation?
Excellent insights. In fact, a question here from one of the audience members is, where's the best place to start from a training perspective? Where would you mentioned you spent many hours watching training videos on YouTube. Would that be a good starting point? Have you found other platforms where you could actually go and learn, gain the knowledge and understanding?
There's an abundance of courses on platforms like Udemy and Coursera. LinkedIn Learning has got some good stuff. The Microsoft ecosystem has got some great learning material as well, which is pretty much costless, really. And so it's all there, and it's great. Even if you are a total beginner, it's worth starting, and it's worth just taking a couple. You don't have to do all of them. You can just watch a couple videos and kind of start you on your way. Because really, any good learning needs to move you from the theory to the application as fast as possible, I would say. I don't think it's worth getting lost in theory. I think it's about getting inspired enough to see, okay, I get this. I've got my hands around it. What do I want to start thinking about differently, or what would I like to change? And then trying it and then applying it. The best training, really, and maybe Ray might want to steal this answer from me, but I'll beat him to it, is really to get to work with your AI. To work with your AI to teach you what you need to know in order to get what you need done. I can't tell you how many times my Claude or my co-work in Copilot has helped me to get over a problem or to reframe something in a much better way, to make me understand the real nature of what I'm probably missing. So your AI is probably your best start when it comes to training. There's videos, there's courses out there, but you can really personalize it to be the kind of tutor you need at every level.
He stole my answer, Errol.
No.
He stole my answer. No. And the end point is actually the most salient point for many, many reasons, right? I'm an enthusiast that goes beyond the 9 to 5 with this. This from the whole theory about the science fiction part of AI. They call it the singularity, right? Where the computer, a computer meets the entirety of human capacity from an intellectual perspective, right? And that's the last invention that anybody ever makes. So I've had the distinction of having this ignited from a passion perspective, and that's driven me. So it's intrinsic. But what I find people are worried about, right, is an existential fear that is making them maybe put their head in the sand a little bit and not explore it. And the best tonic for getting over that type of thing is to actually start engaging with AI itself. Start having a conversation with AI. And you'll find one of a couple of things is that as a true collaborator and a thought partner, you won't regret the experience. That will get you over the adoption friction of the hurdle, and that will ignite the interest for you to want to learn more, okay, to begin with. But I think the proviso is to engage. The simplest way is not to necessarily have to go and do the technical thing about curriculum. By the way, there is no curriculum for this because it becomes null and void the next week with the next update, so it's all irrelevant. This is too fast moving for a static curriculum, and that's going to change the knowledge industry and the education industry, going forward. But play around with the AI, become a collaborator with it, and that will ignite a journey for you where I believe you'll be intrinsically motivated. And once you're intrinsically motivated, you will find the resources yourself. You will come up with the ingenious methods, to be able to learn your craft, and that nobody can teach you. So it's that curiosity, that intrinsic motivation. Use the AI, that will get you over the hurdle, to begin with.
Yeah, you make a really good point. I mean, when you heard about AI initially, you thought, well, that's so far out there. I don't have the necessary skills to fully understand and engage. But once you really explore and use that curiosity, so from my own personal perspective, I was a novice a year ago. I'm a frequent user and have agents working for me day and night, which I thoroughly enjoy. And that wouldn't have come through going into training courses. It was just being curious enough to explore and working with great guys like yourselves in understanding what could be done to create these opportunities to learn and also create frictionless ways of building the business. So you're absolutely right. I think you do want to have that curiosity when engaging with it. So talking about that then, Ray, what areas should organizers avoid where people are chasing technology instead of solving real business problems?
So it's exactly that. It's the bright, shiny lights of a new model. It's the promise of the hype that surrounds this industry as well. You've really got to be careful because this is such a moment in human history. You're going to get a lot of opportunists that are going to be selling you. So part of the education is actually knowing when to actually not adopt something. The whole idea behind it is, and then also, educate yourself on the way that society is changing and the way that that society en masse, of which enterprise and business is a part of. But let's not be, this is society, this is consumers. These are people, and they're adopting it from a personal perspective. They're adopting it from a work perspective. It's becoming ingrained in the way that we live, right? So educating yourself on what is fundamental and vital for you, what serves your purposes, and what is something that is a bright, shiny light there in the distance that is not gonna deliver what it's promised. So learn to distinguish between the hype and the reality of what you can do. And I think the only way of doing that is to stay curious, to be honest, and to know, hey, really, this is hype. This is rubbish, that they're selling me over here. I'd rather go this direction because I understand, where this is going and what value it has to me. I think it's a very trying time at the moment for people because there's a lot of confusion. So it's really a thing to become curious and to make sure you educate yourself. And knowledge is power, as with everything. I think that's probably the best advice I could give.
Oh, that's fantastic advice. So on the other side of that, then, so what excites you most about where AI is heading in the next 5 years?
Nothing to do with AI. Everything to do with people. I'll be honest with you. This is really why I'm in the game. If I could wave a magic wand and 5 years from now we lived in a world where everybody, and I know I'm going to get touchy-feely over here, but this is, there's no way of denying this. If everybody lived their true potential, and I'm talking about being engaged in activities that they were inspired to do in the first place. Nobody's inspired to wake up on a Monday morning and do an Excel spreadsheet. It's a means to an end that you hope you can achieve your greater goal, which is to make an effect in the world. So I say to you once again, right? If data correlation and the artifacts that are created are taken off your task, what is it your mission to do? It's your mission, okay, with these tools in your hand to find your space in the world where you can make a true difference. And the only thing that's going to make a true difference is the unique combination of what you have to bring to it. So it's not the AI. Harness the AI, become a master of the AI, but you make the AI work in service for you to be able to show your unique attributes to the world. And that is it. That is really the thing that excites me, how we evolve together with it, to become our best selves.
It's an excellent answer. So actually, just while you were speaking, Ray, Hunley posted a question in the chat. If I wanted to start and had to select one AI platform, which one would you recommend?
It's what you want to achieve out of it. I would actually sit down with you and I'd ask you, well, is there something specific that you thought AI was about that interests you about it? And then I'd be able to guide you. I'd be able to say, well, then try this platform and that platform. But you know what, Handy, you've got the chance to try all of them for free. And that's what I'd be doing. I'd be going to your GPTs, your Geminis, your Claudes. I'd be using the free versions of that. I'd be chatting with them and I'd be deciding which personality I like, right? Take it from there. Which is the best experience? You have the chance to actually jump in and test at very little friction, and then from there, I think you'll find your spot, I think you'll find your place. Everybody has thus far, so don't be afraid, experiment.
Excellent. And then just a question that I have for here, I want to just, this is going to be a rapid fire. So one sentence answer to these, and I'll ask both of you. So we'll start with Ray first. The biggest AI myth?
That it is going to take your livelihood, your job, and you're going to live in a dystopian world.
For me, I'd say that the biggest AI myth is that there's no change that won't hurt a little bit.
That's good answers. The biggest opportunity, right?
Exactly that you have the chance to be liberated out of the drudgery of what you thought work was before, by upskilling yourself, by presenting yourself in a world where you can have an advantage, and hopefully people alongside you recognize that and you all grow together. But even if that isn't the case, you have a tool that can accelerate your livelihood right now. You have a system that you can invoke that can really produce the best of what you have to offer to the world.
For me, it's been being able to move from doing to directing.
Doing to directing. That's fantastic. Well, biggest leadership challenge?
How they are going to make a paradigm shift from thinking how their business operates right now, how to redesigning it to become AI first from the ground up. It's something that's daunting. It's something that maybe 2 years when you suggested it, you'd be laughed out of the boardroom, but it's something they're taking very, very seriously now about how to do it. And that's really how to reinvent yourselves in this era.
I would say, keeping it short, the stomach. I think there's something about finding the stomach for being able to think boldly, think clearly. Once again, this is not about AI or even technology. Just like Ray said, the real fascination is with what happens and how we respond as humans. Finding that willingness and boldness and clarity and strength of that as well, to be able to move forward in an industry that is otherwise saturated and busy and has its way of doing things. I think that it requires some nerve and some steel to be able to do things differently and to decide that a different way can be done. And I think that's always a good leader's challenge.
Excellent. One habit every executive should adopt.
Executive, you're saying. Making sure that if they do nothing else, they enable an environment that people can experiment and adopt themselves and have a natural curiosity. I believe that will make an intrinsic change in an organization from the ground up. So as an executive, to enable that environment, I believe that is their mission today.
Yeah, I would say so, very similar. Allow people to make mistakes. Mistakes are good things. Mistakes aren't bad things. They're good things. It's something trying to find a way to work out. That's what a mistake is. So if we can make more mistakes, what did Steve Ballmer say? One of your friends at Microsoft, Ray? You got to increase your rate of failure to increase your rate of success. So yeah, that's how it works.
And then last of the rapid fire, one thing every event organizer should stop doing.
Sure. That I've gone blank on. So one thing every event organizer should stop doing is putting their head in the sand. You know, you had a very, very small sample size there. I have a suspicion that that without the metrics, that there probably isn't a large adoption. All right. So the sooner they start realizing the art of the possible with this technology, the better. So get on with it quickly, and see. As I said, events organizers in Europe, I think, are a little bit advanced this way. There was a person that asked the question, sorry, I will go on a little bit. There's a person that asked the question about how did I curate my information? It was, I actually stood in front of a large language model screen and I told it all about what I liked. It organized my journey from breakout rooms for the next 3 days, all the way to what I had for lunch, based off a conversation. No form filling, no anything. It was a natural conversation. So I think they're far ahead, with that type of thing. Embrace.
That's an excellent insight there, Ray. So I'd like to pose a closing question to both of you. If you could leave every event organizer watching today with just one piece of advice about preparing for the future, what would it be?
Alex, you want to go first?
Okay. Yeah. I would say stop using Excel if you can, unless you're in the finance function. Yesterday's systems aren't going to be the kind of things that are going to help you, for tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with Excel. I'm a big Excel fan myself, but I use it as a way to describe the umbrella of the kinds of very manual ways of thinking. So whether it might be Excel or using handwritten notes to kind of, make decisions, we've got to kind of get onto, the 21st century, and we're still doing things in the 20th century. We really are. I think that would be one thing, do an audit and see what could be brought up into, 2026. The other thing is find a way to make all your good people stay, because you're going to need good people in order to navigate not just change in technology and AI, but change in uncertain markets, in geopolitical instability, in the world is kind of shaking right now, and so you're going to need your good people more than ever. And I think that it's high time to be able to acknowledge them, to reward them, to make sure they stay, because they'll make sure your business stays.
Yeah, great insights, Alex. Ray?
For me, it would be have the courage to look at your business as if you were starting it tomorrow. There are businesses and startups, and Alex suggested in another answer, that right now are becoming one-man billion-dollar businesses, right? So I believe the slate is clean. I believe it's behest on us, no matter how much market share we have, no matter how big an organization we are, to reimagine our businesses if we were starting at day one. And what would we incorporate if we did that, right? So go on a fact-finding mission to know what the capabilities are. Try and forecast, because that's going to be your real competitive advantage, is if you can think in the future, okay? Incorporate this front up to begin with from the ground, okay? And hire the best people, like Alex says, because at the end of the day, it is really, about the people. This isn't, a pat sort of cliche. People will drive this thing and determine the success or not, but it will be a structure that will change completely. It will look completely different from where we are now.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And it's going to change fundamentally in the next 3 to 5 years, even more, Ray. So I'm looking forward to having more conversations with you. In fact, the both of you. I'd love participation today in today's panel. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope our audience enjoyed it too. Please follow us on AAXO. We'll be posting a version of this broadcast on the website shortly. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to direct it to AAXO, and happy to continue the conversation. But thank you, gentlemen. I've really enjoyed today, and thank you, everyone, for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Cheers.